My mum always used to say, Northerners get buses, Londoners get the train. I sat next to Paul Heaton on the bus. This seemed about right, that's where Paul Heaton would be. On a bus, with his face, he has a bus face, all northern and square. My mum would have loved seeing Paul Heaton on a bus. He's the only famous person I've ever seen on public transport. I once saw Fern Cotton get into a taxi. Londoner, just her, driver in the front, and just her in a taxi, with her London face. Paul Heaton wasn't reading a paper or listening to headphones or jotting down notes. He was just sitting on a bus, looking out of a window, like he'd done it loads of times before. Like Paul Heaton just gets on a bus and rides it up and down. Manchester, to Huddersfield to Sheffield, wherever the bus goes, so does Paul Heaton. Fern Cotton just gets the taxi to where she's going, in London. West London to East London to North London to South London, always London. Wherever Fern Cotton goes, so does a taxi. The bus was empty and I'd sat down right next to him, just me and Paul with the whole top deck to ourselves, sat next to each other. Paul Heaton moved seats. He seemed uncomfortable. I was hoping he'd felt comforted, both of us, enjoying a nice bus ride, a nice northern bus ride, next to each other. We'd been on the bus together 15 minutes when he got a notebook out and wrote a sentence. I couldn't see what he wrote. He put the notebook away. I began humming Happy Hour, quietly. I thought he'd appreciate the knowledge, just allowing him that little smile. I could only see in the back of his head, but he seemed content. He'd got on a bus, a nice northern bus, and a nice northern man had sung his song. A theme tune for him almost. Fern Cotton could never get that in her taxi. No taxi driver was greeting her with the Fern Cotton Radio 1 jingle. They'd lose their tip. I had nothing to lose. I was out to gain a friend, a famous friend who'd write songs about me. Me and Paul in our times on the buses of Manchester. It'd be a BBC show, BBC 4 repeated on BBC 2. Paul and me on the buses. We'd round around and meet people, talk about how bus travel had changed, and be pals on the buses. Fern Cotton's got her pals. She doesn't meet them on buses. She's closed herself off, like Londoners do. That's what my mum said, they're grumpy in the south. I suppose they know enough people, so many people, not like the north. We've got space for buses, nice buses. Paul Heaton stood up to get off. I hummed Happy Hour louder. It caught his attention. Paul came up to me. He was smiling. He opened his mouth and in a deep southern accent said, "Sorry mate, I just look like him." My heart sank. Nice bus though. And not Paul Heaton rang the bell and walked down the stairs. Cheers.